How's it going, everyone? Today I'm going to be doing a review on our 2006 Saab 9.3 Aero. I'm going to be explaining to you why it could possibly be the best European sporty and luxury car that you can buy for $5,000 or less. I wanted to start this video really quick from the outside of the vehicle to go ahead and give you guys a quick walk around of it and explain some basic details of it. This is the new generation Saab 9.3. Saab made this car from 2003 up until when they closed. Now, from 2006 to 2009, Saab offered the 9.3 with a V6 turbo engine, which this one has being the Aero. So from this motor you get about 250 horsepower and 258 foot-pounds of torque. And due to the wind, I'm not going to record any more out here, but I do want to do a bit of an exhaust sound for you guys before we get started, just because this car sounds pretty good for being a 100% bone stock car. It sounds pretty good. So I'm going to set the camera up. I recorded a cold start before I started to record. I'm going to get a warm start and then a couple of revs for you guys right now. Are in the 9.3 Aero. Let's go ahead and go for a drive. So this specific 9.3 Aero, you might be able to tell, is actually owned by my family. It's not my specific car, but we've had it in the family only for about 2 months or so, and we got it for a pretty good price. We got it for $2,400, and we haven't really done much to it since we bought it. All we've really done to it is clean up the headlights and put an Aero lip back on it. Now, since I mentioned an Aero lip, I'm kind of making this video, if you're a normal viewer and you're watching this, a lot of this information in this video is probably going to be a little bit redundant, and I apologize for that. This video is going to be more focused towards potential buyers that might not necessarily know much about this car. So, when I mentioned Aero lip, the Aero came with a lot of upgrades over the standard 9.3. So the Aero, generally speaking, for all model years, was the top of the line 9.3 that you could buy. I mean, in 2008 you had the Turbo X, which I have one, which came with the same motor, but it came with cross-wheel drive, a bunch of other, special specific things. If you want to learn more about that car, you can go ahead, click up here in the top corner and learn about that. Aero itself came with a lot of little upgrades, especially on the pre-facelift like this one. It came with a different style front lip. It came with different seats. The interior was different, came with a different steering wheel, came with this silver trim around the center console and the shifter, which this one actually has wood trim. We still need to get a silver trim for it. Came with dual exhaust, and from the model years, like I mentioned, 06 to 09, it also came with the B284 motor, the 2.8 V6 from Saab, GM, Holden, whatever. They all kind of work together. It's a GM motor. Doesn't mean it's bad, it's actually really great. So this came from factory. This model year came with 250 horsepower and 258 foot-pounds of torque, which by today's standards is a good amount, but it's not a ton. But back in the day in 2006 and even now, it's still a pretty quick car. I'm going to go ahead and use that as an excuse to punch it. Now this car comes, before I do this car comes with a 6-speed automatic transmission. You can also get it with a 6-speed manual. The automatic's going to be a bit more popular. So we're just going to use the paddle shifters on the steering wheel here, go down in the second gear. I'll put the windows down too, so you guys can hear the engine. Again, this is a 100% stock car, and it's got a pretty good amount of torque to it and power. That's going around a turn, and I hit that pretty quick. Hit that well above the speed limit pretty quick. So I mentioned sporty because the Aero, like I said, while it's the top of the line 9.3 that you could really buy, it's meant to be the sporty one too. So like I said, it came with the V6 engine, so you got that more power, you got that more torque, you got these sportier seats, sportier interior, you got that silver trim instead of wood. So it's meant to be the sporty trim of the 9.3, and it really does show. I mean, I think it's a pretty quick car, I'm not gonna lie. For being bone stock, my Turbo X has the same motor, different drivetrain and everything, but same motor, and it feels quick, of course, but mine's also modified. Then get a tune for it without really doing any modifications, and you can make more than enough power to have fun with. And if you really want to modify it, you can really get into some serious trouble with just doing some full bolt-on modifications. So if you're looking for a car to modify that's also cheap, definitely consider this. So when I'm looking at, you know, price point, because that's kind of in the title of the video, is price point. So you can get one of these Aeros for under $5,000, especially if you do your homework and look into it a bit more. Now, of course, lower mileage, nicer ones are going to go for well over $5,000. You know, not like anything ridiculous in most cases, but you can get your average Aero for around $5,000, I'd say. And we paid about $2,400 for this one. AC is off, radio is off, and outside of being sporty, it's also, you know, it's a very comfortable car to ride in. The Aero did come with stiffer, a little bit lower suspension, but it's still a great, comfortable daily driver. Looking at practicality, of course, this is a 4-door sedan. Saab calls it a sports sedan. You can fit 5 adults in here if you want. Storage is great. I have plenty of room for anything I'll ever need for a trip by myself. Now, if you're taking your whole family with you, that might be a different story depending on how long you're going to be gone. But there's definitely, you know, it's a sedan, so it's sedan storage. You can't expect, you know, it to be the practicality of a Chrysler Pacifica, like the one that's slowing up traffic right in front of me right now. Reliability is one other thing that falls under the daily driver category, I suppose. Now, it's not going to be a Toyota Corolla in terms of reliability. I did a video discussing some common problems with these cars a while ago. I will also link that at the top corner up here. But they are pretty reliable cars. I mean, people hear the name Saab and they think they're unreliable, but that's not true. So definitely check out that video if you're interested. And I guess one other thing in terms of daily driving that I should mention is amenities and features. This car is pretty well loaded with features. It's got a lot of little Saab quirks with it, like the night panel button, which is really cool. It's got an aux cord. It's got all those basic things that you want. Granted, it is a 14-year-old car, so depending on what year you get, you might not have the option for nav, but nav was an option for most years on the Aero. As a black M3 pulls out right behind here, I guess I should kind of talk about the Aero's competitors. So back in the day, it wasn't necessarily a competitor with the M3, because that was kind of in another echelon up in terms of price point and performance, but it was more of like a 335i competitor. You know, it definitely held up for the most part with that. It is a pretty peppy car. I mean, I don't have to give it much gas to really get into it. And it is front wheel drive, but like I said, depending on what year you get, you can also get an all-wheel drive variant of it. The exhaust note, it sounds pretty good for a stock car. The V6 is a really great sounding motor in my opinion. Now, it's not a V8 of course, but I mean, with the V8 you also get even worse gas mileage. Steering is not as light as a 9.5, but I don't necessarily like the 9.5 steering. I think it's way too light. I think it's a good weight. You know, you feel like you're in control. It's pretty responsive. It's not going to be as great as, say, a true sports car, and again, it's also front-wheel drive, but I think it's great for what it is. The seats are extremely comfortable, and they're also supportive. I really like them. They hold you in around turns. Now, they can wear over time. These seats are somehow miraculously in just about perfect condition. And of course, if you are buying a 9.3 Aero to be sporty and not necessarily daily driver and you want a manual, you can get these in a manual. The manuals are a ton of fun. So parts availability, that's another thing I want to mention. You guys can check out a video up here in the top corner explaining more in depth some part sources for these cars. But parts are still plentifully available for the new generation 9.3 and most modern Saabs. There are a couple major suppliers in the United States alone. East Saab Parts is probably the best one all around. Matt is a great guy. He's very good about getting your parts to you on time. Very, very helpful as well. He's extremely knowledgeable. I guess I could also talk about some of the downsides of this car, and there are a couple. There aren't many in my opinion. One of them, and this to some people is a downside, to some people it's not. I'm not really sure which one it is in my view, but it's a very understated and subtle car. You know, with the Aero, you do have the more aggressive looks. It's very subtly aggressive with the exhaust note, with the looks, and you know, it's not going to turn heads. So if you're looking for a car that's going to turn heads, you know, unless you straight pipe this thing, you're not going to turn heads with it necessarily. But it's a very subtly aggressive and quick car, and some people again might see that as a downside. But the major big, you know, consensus downside that I think everyone, you know, Saab lover or not, can agree on is the interior, not quality, but the plastic quality on it. So with these 9.3s, this is obviously a GM era 9.3, so you got that GM garbage plastic that I absolutely hate. It peels over time. You grab the door handle and you pull on it and it creaks and makes this cheap plastic noise. I mean, it's trash, and in a true Saab you wouldn't have gotten that, but that's just part of the GM ownership. Is it a huge deal? No. Is it something that you can fix? Yes, you can get quality leather door handles if you really want them, but it's just something to be aware of, that the interior quality on this might not necessarily be up to par as some of its competitors. But I think that's all made up for in all the other aspects I mentioned, as well as the price point, because like I said, you can't get the competitors for this car. Even with depreciation, you can't get its competitors for the price that you can get this for, and in my opinion, this is superior. And am I biased because I own 2 Saabs personally, and I've been around Saabs my entire life, and I love the brand to death? Probably a little bit, but the facts are still there, and the price speaks for itself, I think. And I mean that in a good way, not necessarily it's cheap for a bad reason. It's cheap because of the negative perception that these get unfairly. So, with that being said, take that knowledge to your advantage and buy one, because once you buy one, you're gonna probably fall in love with it. And once you read owners' reviews and you look on Facebook groups, you'll see that there's thousands of great Saab lovers still out there that are more than willing to help you with any sort of problem that you might potentially run into. So, with that being said, I think that's really all I've got for today, guys. If you're interested in learning not more about this specific car, but about Saab in general, feel free to go through my channel. Like I said, I've got 2 new generation 9.3s myself. I've got the Turbo X, which has the same motor as this, and I've got the 2.0 9.3, which is my daily. That one's, the more commonplace 9.3. If you enjoyed this video and you found it informative, make sure to give it a big thumbs up, but I think I'm just gonna enjoy the short drive home. Maybe put the windows down, listen to this exhaust note, have a little bit of fun.